The calls that used to feel clean have started to feel heavier, and you can't always tell anymore whether you're reading the room or you're protecting something. Hi, I'm Tami. I'm an executive leadership strategist and advisor, and this is a Leader's Purpose podcast. You're sitting in a seat where the decisions you make are visible, impactful, and felt by everyone around you. You carry the weight of the organization, and everyone around you knows it because it means everyone pulls on you constantly. And most of what you've been handed about leadership isn't wrong. It's just backwards. I spent years studying what drives performance at the highest levels. Every week, I bring you what I've learned, the patterns, the reframes, and the things that no one's saying out loud. So you can stop managing your leadership and start trusting it. You already have what it takes, and this is where you get to remember that. Let's do this. But before we get into myth number 3, which I'm really excited about this myth because, well, I'll get into that in a moment. But before we get into today's episode, if you've been listening and something's landed for you, I want to point you to something specific. One is you can just get on a call with me at TamiMurrayCoaching.com/call. And let's talk one-on-one about what's going on, what your leadership is doing, and what is holding or not holding. But I did put together a private audio series called The Invisible Weight, Why Leaders Who Earned It Are the Ones It Hits the Hardest. So the 6 episodes built for leaders at your level, and it goes deeper than I typically do here on the podcast because it's like one situation going deep with it. So the link is in the show notes, so go check it out. But before you do, stick with me with this podcast because myth 3 it's one that I had to check myself. So welcome to the Leadership Myth series. This is number 3. So we've talked about the collaboration versus like execution, and then clarity. And if those two landed, this one may land even more. This is something that I think the leadership world treats as almost sacred. Gut instinct. So here's the myth. Strong leaders trust their gut. And here's what nobody says out loud. The leaders I have seen make the most expensive decisions were not the ones who doubted themselves. They were the ones who stopped examining themselves. And that's not the same thing. And today, this distinction is everything. So I've built my career, my life on good instincts, reading the room fast. I've called things correctly when the data was not there. My gut has been one of the most reliable tools for me. And there have been times in my leadership and my life that things have shifted, where the calls that used to feel clean, easy, started to feel heavier. There's not because the decisions got harder, because there's the time. Well, I'm just thinking of a story that when I was in the military and I was on a crisis, we were doing a crisis training, and I was on a special team. It's a crisis team, for lack of better words, but we were doing a training and we were doing an exercise. And in those moments, my gut instinct is usually the right instinct. So I've honed that. But there's times that other things are going on and it's not in a crisis mode, but the calls felt heavier. And it's not because the decisions got harder. It's because there was more noise around it. It's almost when there's a crisis situation, all the noise kind of falls away. So this is more on the Tuesday when all of a sudden things happen. Because there was more noise around it. So more people pulling on me, more visible stakes, and more eyes on the outcome. I still trust my gut, but there's times that I can't always tell anymore. There's other things that get in the way. So am I reading the situation clearly, or am I protecting something? Am I protecting my reputation, my relationship, the way the room is going to receive this decision? So it might sound like I keep second guessing myself, or I used to make the call and immediately wondered if I read the room wrong, or I used to trust myself. What happened? Here's what's going on. And it's not that your instincts are failing you. I want to be clear about that, because if you have those instincts, you've honed them, you've kept them. However, it is worth examining them. So gut instinct is a pattern recognition from experience. It is real and it's very, very valuable. But overconfidence, that belief that your instincts do not need examination, is one of the most common and most expensive decision errors at the senior level. And it's not because senior leaders are arrogant, because nobody questions the leaders with a track record. And that's exactly when it gets expensive. And especially when it's a track record that you built your career on. But here's something worth naming. Not everyone means the same thing when they say, I trust my gut. So this was one of the interesting things as with my research, with working with the Enneagram, working with understanding the why behind things. So I wanted to talk to you about, because we all may say, I trust my gut, but it looks different for different people. So that way you think, you can filter it through your lens. So for some leaders, the gut is the immediate and physical. And this is where I land. The decision comes fast and it feels like certainty. The body knows before the brain catches up. And the real information, and for those leaders where this is the most natural access point. And that's the real information. Sorry, excuse me about that. The question is whether you're reading the situation or reacting to it. Reading or reacting. Responding, reacting, very different. So there's also another type of leader where they call it the gut instinct, but it's actually very fast logic. The analysis happened so quickly that it felt like intuition. And the risk is mistaking the speed of your thinking for the accuracy of your read. And so if you describe it in a way that it's more fast logic, this still applies to you. And for then the third type of individual, the third type of leader, for others, it might be a deep read on the relational temperature of the room, how people feel about the decision and whether it preserves what matters. And the risk here is making the call based on what the relationship can hold rather than what the situation requires. So 3 completely different wirings. All of them say, I trust my gut. All of them mean something very different. And all of them need the other 2 in the room before the decision lands. And I say in the room, I mean, I typically picture, I try to think of things in pictures and metaphors. And in this, when I'm making a decision and I'm one of those physical and immediate, I feel it in my gut and in my soul before my body or my emotions catch up or my thought catch up. So what I do is I invite the other 2 to the table. How do I feel about it? And what do I think about it? And how do I feel about it? So that's what I mean by bringing the other 2 in the room. And so if you are the emotional side of the relational side, then listen to your body. What is your body saying? And then listen to your thoughts as well. So that's just a little tidbit of when we say, I trust my gut. This is why I love definitions so much and asking ourselves these questions and examining, like, what do I mean by that? Because it does look different for different people. And for those of you who like me and like to know the why behind the what, and this is my favorite part, but research shows that the body flags decisions emotionally before the conscious mind has finished processing the information. So don't mistake, like, your thoughts come and trigger before the emotion, but your body typically recognizes your feelings first. So your gut's not making things up. It's just running very fast, a very fast, sophisticated pattern recognition system. And so the problem is that same system cannot always tell the difference between a pattern from this situation and a pattern it learned from somewhere else entirely. So when the signal feels heavier than it should, then it's worth paying attention to. And one of those things you can ask yourself is, if you are, like I went through the 3, the heart, head, and gut, the body, mind, and heart. If you bring all 3 of those and ask, how do you feel in each one? What is your thoughts? What are your feelings? And what is your body saying? That's a good way to, like, give your brain time to catch up with everything. So the leaders who catch this are not the ones who doubt themselves more. The leaders they don't doubt themselves more. They're the ones who examine their instincts with the same rigor they apply to everything else. And this is the difference between trusting your gut and running on autopilot. Because we know autopilot, and again, from the flying world, but also when you're driving and you, like, show up at home and you're like, how did I get here? I don't remember making the turns. Your body's in autopilot. So you know, it's just your typical responses. And when you start making decisions from autopilots, that's when that's when decisions get expensive and get errors happen. So what does it look like when you're running on autopilot? The decision that felt obvious but landed wrong. What worked before doesn't work this time because it's a different situation altogether, or you have different stakeholders. The call that you were certain about that the team quietly worked around. And the moment you realize that you're protecting something that you haven't named yet. And that one might be something that I've come across multiple times. But some of us are wired to lead from the gut naturally. This wiring is a genuine strength, so we don't want to discredit it. So the question is not whether or not to trust it, it's to take a moment to define it. So the question is whether the head and the heart are in the room before you commit. So the head, heart, and gut, there we go. Make sure that you've checked with all three. Based on whichever your first instinct is, check with the other two. And just because you say, I trust my gut, is it really your gut, or is it your logic, or it's your emotions that you are trusting? And again, it got you to where you are. So it's not like it's wrong. It's just a matter of it's time to start examining it a little bit deeper. So what becomes possible when the signal gets clear? This is when you realize that you don't have less instinct. You have more precise instinct. You know that you're reading the room correctly. You know what's happening when you're reading the room and what aspects you're reading. And you know when you're protecting something. And this is where because we're natural, we're survivalists. Our brains are meant for survival. And so when I say that we're protecting something, this is not because it's like we're afraid. This is a core survival that is ingrained in us. And so it's there whether we like it or not. We just get to leverage it. We get to use it. We get to decide if this is something we need to protect now or not. But that level of discernment is what separates good leaders from exceptional ones at this level. And what do the decisions look like when the signal is clean? The call gets made, it holds, and you don't spend time, on the drive home auditing it. There we go. Why is that word so hard today? Auditing it. Say it quick. What my team looks like when I lead from a clear signal. So what does your team look like when you're leading from a clear signal? They stop routing everything back to you for validation. They move because you moved. And the pulling shifts. Not because you changed who you are, but because you stop leading with static in the signal. It's very clear. You are steady in your decision and you can feel it. And I know that it's one of those, it's hard to describe, but you know when someone is firm in their decision and when someone's wavering. And so you don't want that wavering energy for your team. You want them, even if you don't, this is not about knowing all the information. We talked about last week with the clarity is rarely, if any, do we have half the information, let alone all of it. But we can be clear on here's the direction we need to go. Here's the strengths that we're pulling from. And here's the outcome that we're heading towards. Let's do this. But what does this feel like? It's not fearlessness. It's certainly not, and not certainly about the outcomes. It's not like you're not afraid about what's going to happen because we don't have the information. But what it feels like is you're settled within yourself, in the call, and in what you know to be true. So you don't need to trust yourself less. You need to trust yourself more precisely. And that's what changes everything at this level. And so when I say that this idea of trusting your gut is myth that we need to dispel, it's really that the way that if the trust that we have in our gut needs to be examined, we don't need to lean completely on just our fast decisions and our gut instincts at this level. So that's myth 3. 3 down, 3 more to go. And next week, I'm going after something that I think is going to make a lot of leaders look at their team different. But I want to encourage you to look at yourself first. So subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss it. The invisible weight is in the show notes. And this is where the conversation gets a little bit deeper. And I will see you next week. But before you go, again, if something landed, I want you to take one step today. So the six episode series that, again, when you sign up for it, it's a podcast. It goes straight to your phone. Easy peasy. it's right there for you. You can get on Spotify or you can get on anywhere you listen to podcasts. It goes there for you. But the other thing too is sometimes we wait. Sometimes we know what our next step is. And I want to encourage you that if you know what your next step is, or if you're feeling a stirring that you're like, I need to fix this. We'll talk about the word fix, but get on a call with me. Let's talk about what type of leader you are from your foundation. Are you the gut leader? Are you the heart leader? Are you the head leader? And what is your natural tendencies? And where is it working? And what's no longer serving you? We get to discover that, and I get to diagnose it, and we can fix that. We can remove what needs to be removed, and we can make shifts instantly in the first call. So it's free, just 45 minutes. Let's talk about what's going on in your leadership. What are some of these things that have been holding you back, but you know can be removed, and you know that there's another level for you. So TamiMurrayCoaching.com/call. Get on a call. I promise you, I am not a hard seller. This is not to work with me. However, many times when we start to just shift to see how easy it is, when we understand our foundation, those are the individuals who end up working with me. So with that, I will see you next week. Bye for now.